Cyber Reapers. Hello, Cyber Reapers. So, tonight, or today, whenever, wherever you are, I would like to talk about a book. I'll try to actually provide, words of feedback for this book. Well, not feedback, I mean, it's positive praise. I'll try to actually put it into words besides just saying, oh my gosh, I love this book so much. I have not tired of Sonora Reyes, their writing yet. In fact, I love all the books I've read by them so far, and I think this might be my favorite. I don't know, I might have to reread The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, even though I just read it, before I make a full decision. But I think this one might be currently at the top out of the three that I've read. So yeah, I'm talking about The Broposal. So, yeah. This was so much fun. I mean, there was so much realness in the book as well as, fun joy stuff. But it just had such a good balance of both that I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to, gush about this book without, just going over and over again about how much I felt, how much I loved how I felt. Which, I don't know, is that helpful? Maybe. For you gauging, if you'll like this book. I don't know. But I'll make sure to cover the premise at least so that you can kind of get what's going on. Because I think most of the book, it really is in the shenanigans that develop after the basic premise. So, I don't think I can, talk about the major events of the book. Well, obviously. I can't talk about, as much of the book as maybe some others. But it really, I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. So to start, this is a contemporary queer romance. So we've got our two main characters, right? We've got Alejandro, or Han for short. Alejandro, he is, how do I describe? Is that a spoiler? No, it's a romance book. You know who the romance is going to be between. So he's queer. He's a queer guy. He's also brown, Mexican American, and he's autistic. So in terms of representation, if you're looking for a book with a main character like that, here's Alejandro. We'll talk about the second guy in a bit. Alejandro, though, he grew up kind of separate from his parents. He grew up with his cousins, and his extended family more than his mom and dad, who reside in Mexico. But yeah, Alejandro, he's looking to get U.S. citizenship, and his job initially, or the job he had before the start of page 1, where he got fired from the job, that job was gonna help him get his green card. Unfortunately, he got fired from the job, so he now has to figure out how is he gonna become a U.S. citizen. Yeah. And that's important. We'll save that, hold on to that thought for a little bit. And then we've got Kenny. Kenny is our second, of the two main characters. Kenny, also brown, also Mexican American, and also a drag queen. Just awesome. He's bisexual, and at the beginning of the book he knows that. He's in a relationship initially with an abusive partner who is, she also works at a, center, at a shelter that helps abused women. So super great of this book to call out, hey, just because you work at a place, just because you work to help abused women does not mean automatically that you can't be an abuser. And so, unfortunately, Kenny's girlfriend, as of the beginning of the book, is abusive, physically and emotionally, and slash verbally. So if, like, just letting you know that is something that is going to be in that book. So if you'd rather not deal with that, like, in your reading, feel free to pass on this book, maybe recommend it to somebody else, because the ex, sorry, it's okay, they break up very soon. It's part of the premise. But yeah, Kenny's ex-girlfriend is a huge part of the story, so just, you'll see her a decent amount. So, just to preface that. But Kenny, when faced with an ultimatum, when faced with an ultimatum about his relationship with girlfriend, he breaks it off with her, and it's super difficult for him because he's only been with her since high school. By the way, they're young adults, not in the literature sense, but in the they're like 23. They're actually like my age, which was kind of fun to read. Actually, I haven't read a book with just straight up people my age in a little bit, so that's fun. You don't find a lot of new adult books just out and about. At least not out of the popular ones, you know. It's either young adult or like adult, you know. So I liked having that middle, the new adult, for this book. What was I saying though? New adults. Kenny, something about Kenny. Their age. Since high school. So Kenny and his girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend, had been together for a while, and so he kind of doesn't know who he is without her, and he's got a lot of insecurities. At the same time, so much confidence. It's so neat seeing that in the same character, seeing somebody who's so confident in certain situations, but also so, like, insecure in others. It just balances really well, and it feels very real. And initially, Kenny was very much my favorite character, and I just wanted to give him a hug. I think, though, by the end of the book, I have a hard time telling whether Alejandro or Kenny is my favorite, though. Because of the two, they're both great. I want to give them both a hug. And yeah, I think initially I latched onto Kenny, but over the course of the book, I latched onto Alejandro. So, they were roommates, Alejandro and Kenny. As every great queer love story starts. Not every great one. They were roommates, and they just, like, they've always been best friends, like, since they were little. They've been really close, to the point where, like, other people joke about them dating, but they never actually took that seriously, and they never actually seriously considered it. But after Kenny broke things off with his girlfriend, he, and of course Alejandro just got fired from his job, so he's looking for a way of citizenship. Kenny suggests, hey, what if we get married? That way you can get your U.S. citizenship, and I can also just not be alone for a little while, you know, and we can just kind of play date, and, like, everybody would believe it, so it's not like it would be that much trouble, getting the government to believe that it's a real relationship, because we've known each other forever. So, yeah, Alejandro at first is very reluctant. He doesn't want to put this on Kenny. He doesn't want to make their relationship based on, like, say, Alejandro owing Kenny or relying on Kenny this much for something that's so life-changing. Because if Alejandro gets his U.S. citizenship, suddenly so many things open up for him. He could go to college, he could get a proper job, he could actually like try to go after a dream job, not just a like base level jobs, you know. He can actually do whatever he wants, and he just hadn't really thought about that much because he didn't ever really think of this as a big possibility of actually getting the US citizenship and being able to really go after what he wants, or to even discover what he wants. And so it's just this huge, this huge decision. Kenny is all in though. Like, Kenny is 100% like, no, you're my best friend. I will do this for you, most definitely. I'm not gonna regret this. We can always divorce like 3 years later, you know? So it's just like he's all in, and I love that. And I love that Alejandro is really like trying to consider, like really, really take his time to actually decide, is this something that's actually gonna be okay for Kenny? So they decide, you know what, alright, let's get engaged. Hence the title of the book, Broposal. Yeah. Is there anything else about that premise that I can talk about? I guess just some of the challenges that come up are like related to, like, at the same time of wedding planning, they also gotta like deal with problems with their jobs, or with finding a job, for example, for Alejandro. They have to deal with Kenny's abusive ex. They gotta deal with a lot of family and friends, like social engagements and keeping up appearances, while also kind of figuring out, hey, maybe this friendship isn't completely unromantic after all. So they're figuring out their emotions for each other at the same time. Alejandro's realizing, oh wow, I thought I was straight this whole time. Maybe I'm not. So that's, that's fun. Alright, I guess I can't really talk more about the premise, I don't think, because it's just, it's a lot of events that have to do with wedding related stuff and their social life and their careers and stuff like that. So it's really just a read and experience it kind of a thing. From there. But I can't talk about like some of the rest of the cast because I focused kind of a lot on Alejandro and Kenny so far. Let's just kind of talk about the lay of the land of everybody else, right? Well, first off, I won't talk about like what Kenny's ex-girlfriend did, but I will say that she feels so real, and she feels almost terrifyingly real, because she's so not evil in like a literature sense, but evil in like a everyday person sense. I don't know how to better put that. Some of the actions she does are just so horrible, but I could see someone doing that, and I know that people actually do, And so the way that her dynamic is with Kenny is just so toxic. She is so toxic and well written to be so, I'm just so impressed at how well her character is written, for so many reasons, of her just like blaming other people instead of herself. And I guess that's all I'll say for like what specifically she does, because I don't want to bog down the video with these specifics, but she's just so well written, I think. Like, I have not been so irritated at a antagonist in a long while, She's high up on my list of like contemporary antagonists. In fact, I think she is actually probably the highest up on the list of contemporary antagonists that I've read. To be fair, I haven't read many contemporary books. However, I think out of the ones I've read, she's up there. Yeah. And as for everybody else, though, everybody else is lovely. Like, their families, the immediate families, like Alejandro and Kenny, their families are just so great. I love also that one of Alejandro's cousins uses they them pronouns and is also like a drag queen, drag queen. Yeah. They do drag. How about that? That's more inclusive, just to say that. Because I don't know if they're also like a drag king. Because I don't remember if it was specifically said in the book. Anyway, they do drag. And just, I loved the descriptions of how the families make food, or always have food for guests and family members. And just this specific descriptors for the food just really, I quite liked it. It made me want to eat the food. And like, it just felt like such a wholesome environment. I was like, yes, please, I'd like a plate. I'd like to be sitting with this family and eating dinner with you, you know? So that was fun. And I think that actually inspired me to make what food in the book inspired me to make that dish. I don't remember, but yeah, it inspired me to make certain food using like some of the ingredients that were in one of the dishes, and I was going, yes, this is delicious, I love it, thank you so much for the inspiration, book. Yeah. And what else? Oh, the cast, in terms of representation, lots of people of color in the cast, lots of queer people, and I think just overall it felt like a nice, you know, wholesome group of friends and group of families. I mean, there are a couple of members of, say, Alejandro's family. Like, Alejandro has to not only cope with being far from his parents and basically growing up apart from them, but also his mother struggles with a drug addiction. I need to practice my diction or enunciation. But yeah, she struggles with that and has for a long time, since Alejandro was little. And so he writes letters to this kind of idealized version of his mother, who kind of just exists in his head, as a way of, like, you know, it's his own kind of form of therapy, to write letters addressing this version of her that doesn't exist. And just, it's interesting seeing the way he has to figure out parts of his identity based on just how he grew up and based on how she treated him when he was younger. And that's all kind of go into on that. Was there anything else I wanted to say about, like, the rest of the cast? Well, according to my notes, no, I covered actually most of all of it. Although I did want to just do a little mention that consent is considered seriously in this story, especially between Alejandro and Kenny. Yeah. So I find that super important. Just, like, it's so easy to write consent into books. It just really is. And it makes reading them so much more enjoyable for me, to have a character just ask to do something before doing something, like touching another character. I mean, obviously, if it's like a part of their relationship that's been established for a long time, that's fine. But just, like, if they're doing, you know, new stuff, or if they're doing stuff that's particularly intimate, you can just ask, you know? So it's super easy to write into books. I do it. A lot of authors do it. And just think that more authors can as well. And for whatever reason, it is not as popularized as it should be. Because for whatever reason, I don't know, I guess in popular books, there's not as much demand, as far as people know, for consent. And that's kind of wild to me. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of all I had on, like, in terms of my thoughts about this book, at least my coherent thoughts, besides me internally screaming about how much I loved it, you know? It is one of my favorites now, which I'm pleasantly surprised at, because I'm gonna be honest, I do tend to lean towards speculative books when it comes to, like, stuff that I consider, like, my favorites, out of all of literature. So I'm pleasantly surprised that a contemporary romance has made it into that list in my head. I think that essentially just means I haven't been reading diversely enough in genre. But I'm trying to remedy that. So I'm glad to have found one to put in that list of, like, my favorites that's contemporary romance, and it's queer romance, so that's even better. Well, in my opinion, just because I like reading queer romance over straight romance. Well, that's another thing. Consent seems to show up a lot more in queer romance in comparison to straight romance. Yeah. I don't know what that says, but that's just a thing that I think I've noted and many other people have as well. I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other, like, thoughts I wanted to dig up or scrape out of my head. I guess that's what this motion is. I don't know. I'm wondering if I should do more calming motions in my videos, by the way. Just because I feel like, I think this is more of a, you are probably not watching me, but you're listening. So I'm not sure if me doing anything actually, like, provides any more, relaxinginess. But if you'd like to see me try that, let me know. I can. I just kind of mostly let my hands flop around as I talk. Like, I'm kind of talking as I normally do, except I'm raising my arms to do it. Because otherwise you won't see what I'm doing, because you can kind of see the motion, but you can't really see what my hands are doing. So it's a lot of fun learning how to move on camera in comparison to just talking. But I appreciate you listening. You are an awesome listener. And I think I'll go ahead and just, conclude with that. I can always add my thoughts to the comments later if I have some new revelation that I wanted to make sure to say. So, yeah. Okay. Wherever you're going, whatever you're doing next, I hope that it is fun and or relaxing and or worthwhile. And ideally, all three.